Welcome back to the channel. I just want to say a big thanks for subscribing. I just hit 500 subscribers, so I'm pretty stoked. In this video, we're going to be painting this old laminate dresser. It is in pretty rough condition on top, but other than that, I think if we paint over this, it might look pretty good. When I picked up this dresser, the owner said that their parents used to actually iron on top of this surface, so the laminate was in pretty rough shape. It was melted down through to the, particle board underneath. So I kind of needed to sand that off because it was scratched up like crazy. While I was sanding, I noticed there was a chip in the surface, so I grabbed some wood filler and we're gonna dab it up and let it dry there so I can get this project moving. This product recommends 2 to 6 hours before you can start sanding, so since I'm only using a small amount, I'd say a couple hours will be fine. But first I will lightly sand the rest of the laminate just so we have a good surface for the paint to stick to, and then we'll come back to the top. I'm using my electric random orbital sander. I have 180 grit sandpaper just to scuff up the surface. And I'm also using 180 grit on the edges by hand, just because the random orbital sander would eat through it pretty quick. Although it's not required, I numbered the drawers, because sometimes when you try to put them back in differently, they don't go in so well. And after finishing sanding everything, just take a rag and let's wipe all the dust off the project. I was going to use bin, but there was none left at the hardware store, so I am trying this alternative, Kills Restoration. It says it works like a shellac, an oil-based primer, but in a water-based form, so we're going to try it out. As you can see, I'm using a paint roller to apply it, so I felt that was the best way to apply this product. Now enjoy some of the priming process. Feel free to skip up to 415, and then I started sanding the top where I applied the wood filler. After waiting for the primer to dry and the wood filler to completely dry, I grabbed my sander and it was time to sand off all the scratches and smoothing out the wood filler. The amount of dust that was in the air after sanding was crazy. I had to come back like an hour later and wipe everything down. Before applying my first coat of primer on the top, I grabbed my 220 grit sandpaper on my sanding sponge and I just lightly sanded the first coat of primer everywhere. After wiping everything, I could finally apply my first coat of primer on the top. And then I started applying my second coat to the rest of the piece. Before we can get started on our first coat of white paint, I grabbed the 220 grit sanding sponge and just touched up everywhere that wasn't smooth. And don't forget to wipe up the dust before painting. It also doesn't hurt to use the vacuum on the inside. It's pretty dusty in there usually. I'm using Ultra Pure White Bear paint. It is on the shelf at Home Depot if you're interested. I decided to apply with a brush, but you can use a roller or a spray gun, but I know most of us don't have a spray gun, so let's use a brush. They're pretty easy to find. Make sure to apply a couple light coats, because if you don't, you'll get some dripping and streaking, and that happened to me on one side, so I had to sand it down. You'll see. Also, going vertical rather than horizontal, it reduces the chances of streaking, so that's why I'm going top to bottom. Now let's watch a bit of this painting process. After letting it completely dry, I grabbed my 220 grit sanding sponge and just did a light sand through the entire piece. But this is the side I painted a little bit too much, so I'm sanding down the drip mark and I'm making it completely smooth. It takes a bit of time, but you gotta do it. So here's the black paint I'm using. I'm painting 3 of the drawers black and leaving one of them white. It was just kind of a random design choice, but we'll see how it turns out. Alright, let's add our second coat of white paint. I also decided that the legs will go black too. For my last coat of white paint, I wanted to add a tiny bit of water in it. I just wanted some more time so the paint wouldn't dry while I was brushing it on, and then it'll likely self-level better. You can use products like Floetrol, but all I needed to do to get water was walk to the sink, so that was a little bit easier. This final coat was a pretty light amount of paint. Now let's add a second coat of black paint so we can cover up the white behind it. I actually decided to do another coat of black paint, but I mixed a tiny bit of water in that as well, so it'll be a nice smooth top coat. When everything's dry, make sure you wipe off all the dust, and then we can start applying our lacquer finish. Lacquer is super toxic, so make sure you're in a well ventilated space and you have a proper respirator. I added 4 coats of lacquer to this piece. So let's take one more look at the dresser before, and here's what it looks like after. If you guys like this furniture flip, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and the bell for notifications so you don't miss out on any more videos. Thanks so much for watching. See you next time.